Thank you so much for that you're here today. My name is Munir. I'm a producer of the Encampments, and I'm also the head of production and acquisitions at Watermelon Pictures. I'm here by Kay.
Yeah, I spoke a little earlier. Hopefully you still remember. Hi again. Thank you so much.
It means so much to us that so many of you are here today, and thank you for that warm welcome. Yeah, we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the film, how it was made. We'll open it up for questions a little later, but Kay, maybe you can start by sharing a little bit about the origins of this project, how it came to be, and how it got to be on screen today.
Yeah, so it started, I mean, obviously pretty coincidentally. I'm first and foremost a reporter for Breakthrough News, so I went to Columbia in April to report. I had been going to Columbia throughout the past months. I had been there in November to report on an alumni protest, supporting the students there. I myself was involved in Palestinian student activism, or in an SJP in my school. So it's something I'm familiar with. So I went because I knew some of the leaders there at Columbia, and they had told me, oh, we're going to set up some tents on the lawn. And it sounded pretty random, honestly, like when you first heard it, but I went to see what was happening. I went to just be there as a journalist, and the first day was, fairly straightforward until the NYPD showed up and said they were gonna, they were threatening to arrest people and this and the other. There were rumors flying, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna stay here and sleep at the camp. So I did, and the next day was when the first arrest happened that ended up making this into a national and ultimately a global movement. I just happened to be there, and after those arrests happened, I mean, it was literally a matter of hours before other encampments started popping up across the country. So that was the point when I was like, okay, I'm gonna live here, that's it.
Can you talk a little bit about why you think the encampment movement spread so quickly? And I think you've spoken about it as like a referendum on several things. If you want to go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Munir and I were talking earlier to someone about why did this become a phenomenon? Why did it become this global movement? Why did it not just stay on Columbia's campus? And I think there's an interesting parallel with what's happening right now. Obviously, the Trump administration is pursuing the strategy of, oh, well, if we deport people, if we abduct them, if we scare the shit out of people, then maybe this will stop. And that's also what Columbia tried to do with that first encampment. They said, oh, well, if we just arrest everyone, they're not going to come back, right? And that's ultimately what was so upsetting to everyone who was watching all these students get dragged off their own campus in handcuffs by their school. And they said, no, like, we're absolutely not going to stand for that. We're going to set up our own encampments. So, I think it was really just the image of students being arrested by their own school that was so infuriating. And, I do believe that we're going to see a similar backlash with these attempted deportations. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Who's being, taken now just in broad daylight? People who just went to a protest here and there are being sent out of the country. Are you kidding me? While there are people who are literally responsible for mass murder sitting in Congress, taking money from weapons manufacturers.
Right.
You're telling me that this is not going to sit well with people, I think.
Yeah, Columbia University, I think, they wanted to repress their way out of a crisis, and instead they repressed their way into a much deeper crisis. Definitely backfired, but at the same time, the stakes are real, right? As we saw in this film, Mahmoud Khalil, the leading part of this film, is currently in ICE custody in Louisiana because of the things that he did and said on that encampment. So can you talk a little bit about the stakes of that? About Mahmoud's case, working with him, etc.
Sure. Mahmoud, it's really, I mean, we've been talking, I mean, obviously the fact that he's in our film was coincidence, accident, but maybe not so much, because the reason we wanted to speak to him to begin with was because he was just such a tremendous personality without even being that. I mean, he was someone who just really carried himself with just the most, upright, forward, just selfless and humble person. I mean, I think anyone who's met him could attest to this, like, at length. That was really what even drew me to him to begin with, and I think why he emerged as one of the spokespeople and one of the lead negotiators. So, to see him in custody, it's devastating, but at the same time, I almost understand why the Trump administration was so keen on trying to cut someone like him down. Unfortunately, I think they picked the wrong person, because he's not gonna break. He's just not. I mean, Munir he also teaches, he's a film professor. He teaches, he knows about the film industry far more than I do, so, I don't know if you want to speak to this. I mean, you know Mahmoud very well yourself, if you want to tell people about your experiences with him.
Yeah, I was an adjunct professor at Columbia University last spring, so I sort of got to witness the encampments up close, and I think that one of the most striking things for me about that time was just the incredible contrast between being on campus and witnessing this inclusive, progressive, radically accepting space and movement that was, pioneering the way that we think about what it means to show up for one another and be in community, and then contrasting that with the way the media was portraying the encampments as just this violent cesspool of hatred and animosity. And I was just there was such a whiplash between looking at the news reports and then the lived experience, hearing CNN calling the encampments anti-Semitic, and then looking at the encampments and seeing a Seder being held by Jewish students inside the encampments for Passover, and then just realizing, oh wow, this is obviously the media has gotten this completely wrong. And I think that this is by no coincidence, right? Columbia University literally sealed the gates of its campus as soon as this started and prohibited most journalists from even being there, right? So there was a little bit of, KKK smuggling himself in and out. But yeah, that stark difference, I think, propelled us to want to make this as a corrective to the narrative, but also I think at the core of the project was always wanting to sort of counteract the gaslighting that these students were kind of experiencing, that they came together in the largest student uprising in American history for a just cause, and then just a year out, people are being punished, people are being expelled, the administration and the previous one too want it to die and to be forgotten, right, from our history. And so we have to mark that and say, no, this happened, and actually this is what it looked like. This is what it looked like, not just from the outside looking in, but here's what really happened inside Colombia. So that was definitely part of the impetus of making it.
If I could maybe ask you, one thing, we were just looking at an article about all the different films coming out of, or about Palestine and about this issue. But one of the things that really changed everything for us was working with Watermelon Pictures. You guys just started, what, a year ago, maybe? Yes. And that has obviously been like a huge thorn for any pro-Palestinian voice, anyone who supports Palestine, anyone who opposes genocide, is the censorship, not just in Hollywood, but everywhere. And obviously this year we saw Noah the Land, win an Oscar, among other things. Obviously there's a Zionist film in theaters right now. But can you talk about Watermelon a bit, explain to people what it is and what the idea behind it was?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you. So Watermelon Pictures is actually an independent distribution label that is championing untold stories, and Palestine is definitely one of the primary focuses of the label. We're very we noticed that in the film industry, a place where a lot of great cinema was hitting a wall was in the distribution phase, right? We knew that the audience for these kinds of films existed, right? I think looking out at this packed house, you know, you guys have proven that. But you know, the sort of, let's say, the gatekeepers of the industry were not willing to allow that to happen. So with having our own distribution company, we're able to reach people through the box office, through streaming, in a radically new way. So it opens the doors for these kinds of projects to exist. And I think this film is such a good case study for why something like Watermelon is so necessary, because you know, such a timely and necessary film, right? I mean, the Trump administration definitely didn't know that there was a documentary about Mahmoud in the works, already edited, locked and loaded to premiere. This proves everything that they're trying to smear against Mahmoud. So, with a distribution company attached from very early stages in this project, we worked with Breakthrough Media, an incredible news organization, and we pivoted very quickly when we saw what happened. And you know, of course, we've been in conversation with all of the protagonists of this film as much as possible. You know, with his people, his family, his legal team, and just you know, for them to understand what the implications of this release are. But I think that there was a lot of excitement too from the community that this film, if we had this film, we had a duty to release it, and that's what we felt, and what we were hearing from our community too. So we were able to do that because we already had distribution plans ready. So I think the last 2 weeks have been kind of a mad rush, getting together, you know, the poster, the trailer, bringing on board Macklemore, which was, you know, that was in the works from before, but really excited to have this, so it's such a huge platform. And so yeah, I think it's just a great example of community-oriented, you know, media outfits working together and trying to tell the stories that we know people want to hear. So thank you all for showing up for that. And just to note as well, you know, we have another incredible film, a Palestinian film called The Teacher, opening here at the Angelika in just 2 weeks on April 11th. So the director, who is Oscar nominated, who is BAFTA award winner, will be here for some of the Q&As, so there are tickets available online. And you know, by showing up, by supporting this film, you are supporting the filmmakers that make these projects possible, and enabling us to keep waging these kind of you know, films in service of the communities that we all care about. So thank you for that. With that, do you want to kind of open it up and see if there's any questions? And one might be able to take okay, 3 questions. Yeah, one over there.
Thank you. My question is for Kay. A lot of folks in these encampments, understandably so, are a bit wary of their face being filmed by someone they don't necessarily trust. So I'm curious how you were able to navigate that, being someone who's not directly from that community.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty straightforward. I already knew several of the leaders at Columbia in the Palestine movement, and they were familiar with my reporting. You know, I think these journalists like have this idea that if they're neutral, like people will respect them, but actually it didn't really work out too well for them in this case, and they knew, you know, I was vocally in support of Palestine, so you know they felt they could trust me. But still, you know, I was very careful about asking people, hey, like, you know, can I film you? If, you know, people didn't want to show their face, obviously, like, I tried to be as careful as I could, but people, you know, I also lived there. That's another difference between me and what the media did is they would just show up for 2 hours and go home. But I you know, lived there for like 3-4 days at a time, and I'd have to leave eventually when I like really needed to shower. But yeah, no, I was there the entire time. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, but you know, it's a very good point, and something that has been front of mind for us is the safety of these students, right? So first and foremost, like all of our protagonists are ghost storytellers. They obviously are, you know, in support of us releasing this film, and they're going to be at some of the later Q&As this weekend. But for everyone else who was in the film, we worked very hard to ensure that you know, anybody first of all, the vast majority of people at the encampments were masked, right? And that was kind of a policy because the students understood the risks of, being unmasked, right? There were doxing campaigns happening at the time that this was being filmed. There were literally trucks circling the campus at the time with people's faces on them, making these faceless smears of them, based on very, very little, not even evidence, right? Just completely artificial claims. So this was front of mind for the students. But beyond that, we also know that the circumstances have changed. I don't think it was a surprise to the students that the Trump administration was victorious. A lot of them were very clear-sighted about the possibilities of that. But we also, we're in close communication with a lot of the groups organizing on Columbia's campus. And they've been seeing and reviewing cuts of the film. We've been doing our very best to conceal people, to protect people's identity where possible. So we will have noticed that there are various blurred faces in the film. They're all for different reasons. Some of them are, counter-protesters. Some of them, all sorts of reasons. But anyone who's featured prominently, we've had a conversation with. They've given their blessing. They've signed, an appearance release. So it really is a project with that in mind. And also just to say, there's so many hours of this footage already available online. It's